Today's date is October 6, 1995. Survivor's name is Jan Menchel. Interviewer is Debbie Portnoy. City and state is Queens Village, New York. Country is United States of America. Language is in English. My name is Debbie Portnoy. That's DEBBIPORTNOY. Today's date is October 6, 1995. I am conducting an interview with Mr. Jan Menchel. The interview is being conducted in Queens Village, New York, United States of America. Please tell me your name.
My name is Jan Menchel.
Please spell that.
Jan-M-E-N-C-H-E-L.
Do you have a middle name?
No.
What was your name at birth?
My name at birth was, first name, Jan Menchel.
And how did you spell your last name at birth?
M-E-N-S-C-H-E-L.
Do you have a Hebrew name?
Yankov Menchel.
What is your birth date?
My birthday is April 14, 1926.
How old are you now?
69.
In what city or town were you born before the war?
The name of the town was Jasina during the during Czechoslovakia. After was occupied by the Hungarians, it was called Kurusmeze.
What country was the first town in?
Czechoslovakia.
Can you describe the Jewish community in which you grew up in?
Yes, there were about 1,000, 1,500 Jews in town, and we had a beautiful community. There were temples, there were Hebrew schools, and it was.
Tell me about your family.
My family had a grandfather and a step-grandmother, grandmother, and my family's name, my father's name was David Menchel, and Frima Menchel, according to marriage name. Her single name was Wilder.
What type of work did your father do?
My father originally had a haberdashery store, which I don't remember because I wasn't born at that time, but then he went bankrupt and started working in a lumber factory, and he had also a side job working in a bank.
Did your mother work out of the home?
My mother was a housewife. She did not work at all.
What type of organizations was your father involved in?
There were no organizations out there. It was a small town, and it belonged to a temple.
What was the name of the temple?
The temple was where we belonged to. It was called the New Temple. And
do you know who the rabbi was?
The rabbi's name was Schneier. I don't know his first name.
What languages did you speak in the home?
My father spoke German. At home we spoke Yiddish. And in school we spoke Czech and a few other languages like Ukraine. At that time, after when the Hungarians came in, I learned how to speak Hungarian.
How would you describe the relationship between the Jews and the non-Jews of the town before the war?
Before the war, under the Czech, it was a beautiful life there for everybody. We worked together. We had, it was very nice.
Which schools did you attend?
I attended the Czech school from first grade to the 5th grade.
What year was that?
That was 19 1932 I started till 1938. And after that, the Czechs in 1938, the Ukraine took over, and the Czechs moved out of the town, and they were Ukraine school. So I went to Ukraine school just a few months, and they gave the Jewish kids a very hard time, which I dropped out of the school. And then when the Hungarians took over, there was Hungarian school, which I did not attend under the Hungarian school.
Under the Czechoslovakian schooling, what type of subjects and activities were you involved in within the school?
Well, it was language, history, map, when you look at study maps, grammar, writing, arithmetic.
What type of sports did you enjoy? Were you involved in?
There was only one sport, soccer, and I was involved in it. I played as a kid also soccer.
Did you ever have any Jewish education?
Yes, after school I used to go to, they called it Cheder, Hebrew school. And during we went to, after school I used to go there.
What type of subjects did you learn in the Cheder?
Cheder, I studied, there was reading and writing, Rasha, a little bit of Gemara, and that was the...
Do you remember your Rebbe's name?
His first name was David. Yes.
Did you ever have any type of anti-Semitic experience in the public schools?
Yes.
Tell me about that story.
Well, during the Czech occupation, we did not have any anti-Semitic experience, but when the Ukraine came in, and also carried over when the Hungarians occupied, they picked all the Jewish kids. When we walked out of school, they were waiting for us and used to beat us up and throw rocks, and it was a very bad experience.
Did they ever do that to you personally?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Did you know who was doing it to you?
Yes, they were local kids that I know all my life. We grew up together. And my brother once tried to protect me, and he fought back with these kids. So the leader of that group, they put him in jail and beat them and did terrible things to him. And he let them out after a day. He was all beaten up. And those were the experience every day that we were afraid to go to school.
What was the name of the leader?
Oh, I really don't remember that. Janusz, something like that.
And what year was that?
That was 1938, 39.
How did your brother get out from the jail?
They let him out. They just took him in and beat him up, and then they let him out.
Did you personally belong to any type of Jewish organization?
Yes, as a kid, I used to go, they called it Chalutz Hatzai. It was a Zionist organization which we were trained. They taught us a little Hebrew. We were trained to go to Israel at that time, but unfortunately it never happened. And we used to dance there, sing, and have a nice social life.
Can you describe what your home looked like?
My home, it was a village town, village houses. It was like a long house, which half of them was occupied by my grandfather, and half was our house where we lived, our family lived. We were 4 children, and there was like a kitchen with 2 bedrooms. 2 people slept in one bed, and living was very hard there because we were poor, and my father worked in this lumber yard, which worked many hours from 5 o'clock in the morning. They used to come home 9, 10 o'clock at night. I remember in the winter time when he didn't show up, there was no electricity there in town. My mother and the kids, we used to get together and looking for him to see where he is. And it was pitch dark. And we found him always on the street pulling wood. We should have enough wood to make the house warm for lumber. And in the winter time was very dangerous. There was a lot of wolves walking around on the street, and so it was very hard life.
Was your family religious?
Conservative.
What rituals did you observe in the home, religious rituals?
I don't quite...
Did you have a Sabbath dinner?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Tell me about some of the religious
Oh, yeah.
activities that went on in the home.
Okay. Friday night, we used to have the Friday night dinner. My mother used to light the candles and have the kids around. And then we went to temple Friday night. And Saturday morning, we went to temple, and we kept our holidays. I wasn't very religious. I used to play soccer on Saturday, which I wasn't allowed. And usually we used to go at the holiday. We used to go visiting family. Kids were playing, and it was a nice family life.
What type of literature or books or newspapers can be found in the home at that time?
Books. And the experience that I have in my house was just the Bible book, and my father used to read newspaper. We used to get from, I think it came from America once in a while, the Tuk, the day newspaper, and I really forgot what other papers they were.
At any point in time, did your family ever make an attempt to leave the country?
Yes. That was before I was born. My father had the whole family here in the United States. His mother was here with brothers, sisters, and my mother the same had brothers and sisters here, and they had all the papers made out before the war, made out to come to the United States. But my grandfather didn't let my mother go because she was the only child that he had there, and he didn't want to remain alone. So they listened and they remained there, and that was a big tragedy.
How did Hitler's rise to power start affecting your lifestyle?
Okay, after school, I went to a trade school, learning how to sculpture. And the same thing happened. I was the only Jewish kid there, which the other kids did not let me study there, so I had to drop out there. And then I felt already the anti-Semitism. And before that, when the Ukraine took over from Czechoslovakia, immediately, and those were local people, immediately they had a list how many Jews they're going to hang in town. All the so-called richer people, they were supposed to be hung in town, and we heard about it. But
how did you hear about it? How did you find out?
There were rumors. They were talking that they're going to do this, and then, after a few months, when they organized all these things, the Hungarians came in, and they saved us at that time from the Ukraine.
What year was this?
That was 1938. And we were saved under the Hungarians for a while. But then in 1943, but I'm jumping.
Well, let's go back a little. Were you ever in the military when you were younger?
No, when I was a kid, they had the Hungarians organized for Jewish kids like a youth military, not actually military. They took us to work twice a week. We had to go to this organization. It was called Levente. And they took us to the mountains to plant trees, and we worked 2 days. It was only Jewish kids, and the non-Jewish kids used to watch us doing that.
So tell me about what happened after you started learning sculpturing and had to leave.
So after I left, I was around 14 years old, or maybe younger. I didn't go to school, so I had to do something. I went to learn how to be a tailor. I was apprentice at the tailor shop. So I was working as a learning how to be tailor.
Was this a Jewish shop, Jewish owned?
Well, it
or
was
government?
Jewish owned, yeah. And I worked there for a year or so, but I did not want to remain in the small town. I was always thinking to go to a big city. So I was able to go to Budapest as a kid, all by myself. I didn't have anybody in Budapest, but I just picked myself up and got enough money to take the train. I went to Budapest.
What year was that?
That was 1942.
Do you know what month?
Not really, no.
Winter, summer?
Like springtime. And I was working in Budapest for 2 years as apprentice. I got enough paid to pay the room where I slept. By a family, I had to pay a certain amount a week.
How much?
It was 5 penge. At that time, the name of the currency was named penge. And
where did you work? What was the name of the place?
I worked every few months someplace else as apprentice. So I worked in quite a few places. And the food I used to, there was an organization, I think it's from the United Jewish Appeal there. They had like a kitchen for kids that they didn't have, they were homeless. So I belonged there, and I used to eat at that organization. And but in 1942, the Hungarian requested that every Jew has to have citizen papers. Who didn't have any citizen papers, they deported to Poland. But at that time, it didn't affect me yet because I was able to get the citizen papers, and I thought I'm safe.
Tell me how you got the... when you were in Budapest working, what kind of contact did you have with your family?
I used to write home. I used to get, in those years in Budapest, they didn't have butter. So my family used to send me butter. I should sell it in Budapest and send home money. So this is the only contact I had.
Did you hear about any conditions that your parents had, any change in conditions because of the war back home?
Well, at that time, in 1942, the war wasn't yet on there. It's the war. There was a war, but it's further away. It was in Poland.
What did you hear about the war?
Which the Germany took over. In 1938, the Poland used to. They ran away. They were occupied by Germany, and some part was occupied by Russia. And the border where I come from was Russian took over that part. And then they attacked Hungary and Germany together. They attacked Russia at that time and took over quite a piece of Poland from the Russians. And the sad part was it that in 1942, which, as I mentioned, anybody who didn't have citizen papers, they organized and they put them in a camp and they shipped them to this part, Poland, where the Hungarians took over, and with freight trains.
Tell me what happened to you personally during that time.
Well, during that time, I was in Budapest in 1940, beginning of 43. I received a note that I should come and report to the police. And I didn't think much of it. I went to the police and I report because I felt I have the citizen papers. They couldn't do anything to me. And in those years, they shipped already the non-citizens. They shipped out from Hungary.
And they were shipped to
Poland.
Did you know what was happening to them?
Yes, yes.
How did you find out about that?
Because they went through our town. The last stop of Hungary at that time was our town on the station. Those trains stopped, and my parents, whoever was there still free, they used to run giving these people water, food, whatever they had. That's a very sad, long story, but I want to finish my story, what happened to me in Budapest. So I reported to the police station, and they didn't let me out already. I couldn't even go home to pick out my clothes. They arrested me, they put me in jail, and they said they're going to send me home. So my parents found out that I'm in jail, so they sent someone to bail me out from it. But it wasn't a situation that I did anything wrong. It was just that I was a Jewish kid in Budapest, which I did not belong there. So when this relative came, he spoke first to the police, and he said, listen, the police told me that if you pay your own trip, I could take you home. I didn't have the money, and I didn't want to, he should pay for me. So I said, look, they're going to send me home anyway, so why pay for the trip? But I made a big mistake. It usually takes 24 hours to get from Budapest to my town. It took me like 3 weeks. Every jail and wherever they stopped in every city, they put me there, and I had to wait a few days. So finally I got home. But in that year, they were shipping these non-citizens to Poland. And I was afraid they're going to mix me up and they're going to ship me out, and I'm never going to get home. But luckily, the police gave me over to the police station in my town, and I went home. But going back to the Jews, what they shipped there, is the most horrible experience and tragedy. Whenever I think of it, many times I go to work and I think of it, I just start crying. They were shipping these people, and it was before the high holidays. It was also transport, I remember. And then I was home already, so I went also to the station to give food, water, whatever we had. We didn't have ourselves much. And the women, mothers, used to just throw the kids out of these trains, that we should catch them, and they know where they're going. And what happened to them in Poland is that they killed them in mass graves. The reason I know that, because Jewish boys, like from 18 to 30, they were there as labor, not concentration camp. They were like labor camps, and they worked there. They used to come back and telling stories that once they shot like thousands of people in one grave. They put a panel, wooden panel. They had to walk, and they were just shooting and just fell in. Even they weren't dead, they fell in the grave and they covered them up. Or they used to say they worked by the river. The name of the river I remember was Dnieper. It's like a Russian river. And they found mothers and children tied together in the river. And stories like this. So
Who told you that?
these people from the...
Do you know their names?
We know a lot of these people because before they went to Poland, they occupied our other half of the house, and they gave us only one room to stay, the whole family, and the rest of them they occupied like military. And they used to come back. They came to see us, and they told us all these stories. And it wasn't stories, that was true. And so those, yes, so these kids that they remained with us, on the high holidays we went to temple, and they were screaming and crying. The voice still rings in my ears. It was awful. And not much later, like that was high holidays, and then in 1944, before Passover, we were taken.
Tell me about the conditions of the transport from Budapest back to your town.
It was awful. It was my personal I was with a guard. They took me. I didn't ride free or by myself. And as I said, they stopped almost in quite a few towns.
Do you remember some of the towns that they stopped at?
Yes, it was Debrecen, Malmö, Sziget, and a few others. I really don't remember.
So
Till I got home. It took me about 2 weeks to get home.
So they would take you off the train?
Right. It wasn't a straight ride. There was a train that went straight from Budapest to Körösmez at that time, but I didn't go with this kind of train.
Where did they put you when they took you off the train?
In jail.
And what were the conditions in the jail?
Well, awful. There was no food, was hardly got water, and was hungry, and it was awful. I was only a kid at that time, all by myself.
My name is Debbie Portnoy. Today's date is October 6, 1995. I am conducting an interview with Mr. Jan Menchel. The interview is being conducted in Queens Village, New York, United States of America. Mr. Menchel, we last left off where you were transported back home, and you talked about what you knew was going on within the war and what was going on in Poland with the labor crews that were returning to your house.
Well, when I got home there, we were still free. I got a job. I worked in my trade. I went to work as a tailor, and I worked there till 1944. But these horrors that what we heard about Poland, we know it's going to catch up with us, but we couldn't really believe it, that's what's going to happen to us. And nobody in Europe believed, in any country people you spoke, they said, never going to happen to us. But it was like a chain work. It happened slowly to everybody in every country in Europe. So, but we were there till 1944, and what sticks out in my mind the most is in 1944, and the war went on with Hungary and Russia at that part, and then we were hoping at that time that the Russians are going to come back and they're going to free us, which it never happened. So anyway, before, in 1944, before Passover, people in a small town, they used to get together to bake these matzahs for Passover, for the holiday. And I remember the last night before the first day of Passover, my father and I, we were carrying the matzahs home from this bakery that we worked together. They packed the bakery in a woven basket. And we were walking on the street, and German soldiers came into the town. They occupied the town, and we were carrying these matzahs between the German soldiers. Luckily, they didn't say anything to us. But till the last minute, we still believed in the religion. So the first night, we had the first Seder dinner. Of course, we had no electricity. We had on the table kerosene lamp, and the windows were blocked. The light shouldn't go out because we weren't allowed to have lights in the house because the war was that close at that time. So we're sitting at the table and we're eating, and all of a sudden somebody breaks through the door and comes in. And it was a German soldier with a gun like this, and didn't say much, but took the kerosene lamp away. We remained in the dark, and of course the dinner was spoiled and was over. And then they came to, like an hour later after this happened, they came to throw us out from the room, that they want to use the room for the military. And there were also Hungarian soldiers there, and they were there quite a few months there, and we were friendly with the officer, and the officer said to my parents, "Don't worry, I'm not going to let them throw you out from the house." So he put guards in front of the door, and when the Germans came, we heard them bickering, yelling, screaming, and they didn't want to let them in. But the Germans won. So this officer who promised us that he's not going to, so he came in.
What was his name?
I wouldn't know. With 4 soldiers with the guns and with the bayonet up, and made believe that they are taking us away, just to put up a show that they're going to take care of us. So they took us to a neighbor, and we slept through, and like 6 o'clock in the morning, we hear screaming, yelling, people yelling. We walk out, and we see the Jewish people. They started from the beginning of the street, starting taking the Jews away from the homes. And they were close to us. My mother, that was like in April, and it was cool. This area is a cool area, it wasn't. And they got to us, and my mother wanted to run for her coat or something, or sweater to put on. She was only in a dress. They didn't let her. They beat her immediately. And those were the Hungarians, not the Germans. The Hungarians, and even the local Hungarians were participating in that. And they took all the Jews away from the town, and they took us to where the Jewish cemetery is, which the cemetery was on a hill, and that was empty land around. And they all put us together there in that. And we also then, they picked out strong boys, start digging a grave. And we knew what happened in Poland with the massive, so people got hysterical, crying, wild, that didn't know what to do. And fortunate, I don't know if it's fortunate, at that time they just dug the grave, which my brother was also had to dig the grave. we weren't killed there. So we were kept there for a few days. They shaved the people who had beards. They cut the beards off. The rabbi, who was rabbi in town, they cut the beard off. And
Was that the rabbi you mentioned to me
yes,
before?
yes. And we were there a few days. Food, whatever we had, we didn't have much. We were surviving with that kind of food. There was no kitchen to give us food or anything. So from there, after a few days, they took us and put us in cattle trains, and they shipped us to get the ghetto. The name of the ghetto was Matisoko. And at Matisoko,
What was the condition on the trains? What was the
awful.
food, the
What
sanitary
was awful
conditions?
was they put in as many people as they could stand, not even sitting. We couldn't even sit down.
How many people do you think were in the car?
Hundreds. Just like sardines, we were standing there. And the only air we got, which the trains have that little window on top. So
What were people doing on the trains during this trip? Explain some of the stories you might have remembered.
You mean on the time when they took us to?
When you're on the train, what were people talking or saying?
They were crying and screaming, and children crying, and there was no conversation that I remember. Everybody more or less knew that it's no good. So I really don't remember how many days we traveled with that train to Matisoko. So finally they let us out in the ghetto, Matisoko. There was a little bit more organized. They had prepared some room for us to sleep, homes. They surrounded a certain area in the city that we were able to, whoever was able to get an apartment, a room, whatever. At that time, money still was valuable. Who had more money got himself a better apartment, a better room. So it was still.
What was the borders around the ghetto? You talked about there were certain streets. Do you know the
certain
names?
streets
Do you know
which
what they
they
were?
blocked off.
Do you know the names?
No way, no. It wasn't a city that I knew. It was the first time that I went there. And so we were there a few weeks.
What kind of a household situation did you have? Who was living with you? How did you work the food and jobs?
There was no jobs, no. We were just free, running around, seeing where we could get bread, where we could get food. There was not organized a ghetto.
How did you end up getting food?
I really don't remember. We just got, I don't know. I really don't remember.
Did your parents supply you with the food, or did you go
my
get it?
parents, yeah, they went, and whatever they supplied us. And I don't know, I must have contributed also to get food. I don't really, it was like free, people didn't know what they're doing. So
Was there a wall or a fence
it was no
around there?
wall, it was just guards, like blocked off streets, and there were guards surrounding us.
And the guards were of which nationality?
They were Hungarians, the guards.
And how did they treat the people inside the ghetto?
Not good. They weren't nice. No. And then also there were Gestapos there in the ghetto also, which the Hungarians and the Gestapos, they worked together.
Was there one that was more in charge than the other?
Yeah, there was the Germans were in charge of the Hungarians, and they were the leaders. They gave probably they gave out the orders what to do.
And who lived in your household in this ghetto? Who were you with?
Oh, we were on the attic, sharing. I don't know how many people were there. We didn't have baths or kitchen that we lived in. We were just wherever we could sleep there. And we were on the attic, and everybody slept on the floor, wherever they could. It wasn't like apartments or separate rooms.
Were there other families in this attic with you?
Definitely, yeah.
How many people do you think were there in total?
Well, in a house could have been there about 25, 30 people. And so we were there at this ghetto a few weeks. Then they took us again to the train station, and they loaded us up in these freight trains the same way, crowded, no food. And this was under already the Germans' command. They took these trains over. And from there they took us to Birkenau, Auschwitz.
Were you in another ghetto? You
No.
in two ghettos?
No, I was only one ghetto. So I really don't know how many days we traveled to Birkenau, but we didn't get. They stopped and they gave us a little water, which I don't even remember.
Was there ever a plan or an attempt between the time you were in the ghetto and the time you were being transported to Birkenau to escape?
There was no way. It's not that you couldn't escape, but there was nowhere to go, because if you escaped and went out to the free world, they people themselves there, they gave you out. They didn't hide us. You could hear only a few instances that some people were hiding some children or what, but in general it wasn't that much. So there was no way to escape. I know a lot of people say, how come you let yourself lead to all these things? You didn't do anything. We had no power, no organized. We weren't organized. There were families together with children. And you didn't want to leave your parents. You didn't want to leave your brothers and sisters. So there was no way to do anything. And yet, the outside people weren't our friends either. So
did any outsiders at any point in time, a guard or a local person, try to help you, even if it was just giving you some food or bread or water?
I'm sure some did, but I don't have that experience, so I cannot say. I'm not saying that everybody was bad, whatever, but I didn't have that experience.
In the ghetto, were there any actions that you remember where they might have rounded people up and took them out? What was the scene when they did that before you left?
They took people to work. Didn't take me. I think I was maybe too young. They took people to do things. I really don't know what kind of work they did.
What did you know about the extermination camps at this point, before you left?
We didn't know anything about extermination. When we arrived to Birkenau, and they let us out from the trains, there were these Gestapo standing and just sorting. And everybody was running. People lost their fathers, their mothers. We were wild like animals, just running. And they were standing there, and there was a lot of lanes. Nobody knew what lane, what it is. And I remember what I saw. I saw on the gate, it says Arbeit macht frei. So I figured, fine, as long as they let us live and they're gonna let us work, it's not bad. So I ran to one lane. I saw my father running to a different lane, which I ran after him to come to my lane. But as I said, people were so wound up, so wild, that he didn't listen, he didn't hear, and I ran back to my lane.
Did somebody tell you which lane to go to?
Yeah, they were standing there in a circle, just with a hand. Go this way, this way, this way.
So
they
he was
sorted the people. And when I looked at that lane where he went, I saw elderly people. So I was scared. I didn't know exactly what's going to happen to them, but I said, how come there's only... my father wasn't that old. He was in the 50s. It was a good condition. But unfortunately, he fell into this lane. And I understand these people went straight to the gas chambers. And as we arrived there, we came to Birkenau, and we were lined up, standing there for hours, and it looked like some of these lanes went into the gas chambers, and then later on, it was dark already, they took my lane where I was standing with trucks, and they took us into Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, when we got there, so we went, there were these, what do you call these, beds, one on top of the other, and everybody found a place where to place themselves. And they cut our hair there, and they gave us the tattoo. Does it show? Right? So here, and they tattooed us in Auschwitz. My number is A3825. And
tell me about the tattooing. What did it feel like when they were putting it on? Did it hurt? Was it a needle?
It was a needle, like a ball pen. And, you know, we really were numb. We didn't feel much. It was not that painful. What we went through already till then, so...
Did you know what happened to your parents at this point?
No, I don't know. The only thing I know, my brother is alive. You interviewed him also. He was in camp from 1938 or 39 because he was separated. He was in Prague, and we remained under the Hungarians. And then when the Hungarians took over, Prague was separated from, so he couldn't come back. And the Jews in Prague was taken to Theresienstadt, I think in 1939. So he was in camp for 5-6 years. And at that time when the Hungarian transports came, he knew they were waiting for us. And he worked at the crematorium to stack up bodies or that kind of work, you know. Or after the gas chambers, they took him to the ovens. So he was working there. And he says he saw my parents working in there. And I didn't see my parents and my brother. They were separated there. I never saw them again.
Did you have any kind of verbal contact? Did you speak with them while you were waiting online?
No, because we were separated from the lines. As I said, everybody went a different line. The women went a different place. My father took a different lane, and I was different. And my brother had a different lane, and we lost each other.
Before you were separated, do you remember what the last thing was that they might have said to you?
I really don't. We didn't talk. Everybody was just, we weren't even human anymore. We were so, it did whatever they wanted with us. We had nothing to say. We were just felt sorry for each other. And there wasn't much conversation going on.
So after they got you to Auschwitz and they tattooed,
So, and they
what
gave
happened
us
then?
they gave us those uniforms, blue and white stripe. And I was in Auschwitz a few days, and they took me to a different camp. The name of the camp was Jaworzno. It was like in Poland. And this camp had already barracks. Everybody got their bed and the clothing there, the prison clothing. And they took us to take a shower all together, which we were scared. And after shower, we had to wait in the line for hours till we got our underwear and the clothes and black coffee. That's all. And then we went into this bar, and they were very strict. There was a block elders there, and they were they tortured people. I remember when we walked into this barrack, they had like a few people hanging by the ceiling, and they were just twisting them around and playing with them. I don't
They
know.
were hanging from the neck?
Neck. I don't know. They were wanted to show us was it psychology work or whatever they wanted to show us. And next day we in the morning we had to get up like 5 o'clock or maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. I really don't know. And again, every time we had to stay in appel, they called it, which they lined us up and they were counting us. And if they miscounted one or two, we were standing for hours till they counted. And we got in the morning black coffee, and they took us out to work. We were walking to work like in a lane. And they assigned me to work. This camp had people who went to work to the coal mines, but I was assigned to work at they were building a power plant. That's what I was taught. I really don't know. I was a building. And I worked at I was mixing cement and cleaning the cement forms, whatever they made, bricks or whatever they made out of the cement. I was cleaning. And
what were the food conditions? How did you get
food
fed?
condition was in the morning we got black coffee. Lunchtime they got us together and they had barrels of soup. We had to stay in the lane, and they were giving out a spoon of. We had our own plate, and they gave us out a spoon of soup. And from experience, I didn't know in the beginning. Whoever got the soup from the top just got water. Whoever was lucky enough from the bottom got a little bit more thicker soup, whatever it was in it, vegetable or so I was always looking from the lane, hey, where am I going to get now, from the top or from the bottom? And after lunch we went back to work. And by the way, every lunchtime we saw the American planes flying through the camp there, and they were bombing Germany. And we were standing and praying they should bomb us, but never happened. And when the planes, and mostly lunchtime it happened, and when the planes flew by, we had to run to a bunker, not because of safety, it just probably didn't want to see the camp. And these German soldiers, the Gestapo, they were walking around with the guns, and if you didn't run fast enough, they shot you immediately. And we missed the lunch after these things happened. So we went back to work, and around 5, 6 o'clock, we marched back to the camp. A lot of people, they were able to take it maybe a few weeks, and then they just gave up. They couldn't walk. We had to carry them out the stretchers to work. We had to carry whoever was a little bit physically healthy, and we had to carry him back, but they had to go to work regardless, even they were dying till the last minute.
Did you ever get sick in this camp?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I got fever, and probably was a cold or whatever it is, but you were afraid to announce that you're sick, because when people were sick there, they got rid of them. They sent them back to Auschwitz or whatever. They had trucks coming in and taking away the sick people. And so I never mentioned that I was sick. I used to go with fever to work.
Was there any medical
There
medicine
was,
there?
Yeah, there was sort of a medical center there, and some people got in there. This medical center was mostly for coppers or blackouts or these leaders there. But the average person was afraid to go there.
And the capos that worked above you, and what were they like? What was your experiences with them?
They were awful. They were worse than the Gestapos. They were, that's the reason they were picked by them to be coppers.
What nationality were they?
Mostly they were Polish. There was a few Jews that they were picked as blackouts.
Tell me about that.
They weren't the nicest people either. They did their job, whatever was asked from them, and maybe worse. They were bad.
Did you personally have any experiences or see anything that they might have done?
Well, I saw the blackouts beat some people to death. That was, I didn't have personal, I was never, luckily I was never beat.
This is tape 3. My name is Debbie Portnoy. Today's date is October 6, 1995. I am conducting an interview with Mr. Jan Menchel. The interview is being conducted in Queens Village, New York, United States of America. Mr. Menchel? Mr. Menchel, we last left off where we were talking about the capo. Do you remember the person's name?
I really don't remember. I could see his picture in front of my eyes, but I don't remember the name. I never had socialized with him, so I really don't know.
What type of activities did you do after work when you got back to the bunk?
After we again came, lined up, they counted us, it took us hours, and they gave us a bread, which we had to, one bread we had to split, share with another person, and save it for 2 days. So many times, and we used to measure that bread, both of us, that nobody should be cheated with a 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. So there used to be friction. Whoever was stronger got a bigger piece of bread. And I saved bread for next day. Many times I woke up in the morning, I used to put the bread under my pillow. And many times I woke up and the bread disappeared. So I was hungry again. And activities, there was no activities. Then we went to sleep. We went to the barracks and we slept. The next day the same thing.
Was there any type of organized resistance within the camp?
No, we had no chance. It wasn't like a ghetto or what that we could get in outside help. It was strictly surrounded with electric wires, the camp. And you couldn't go close to the fence, and there was no activities.
Did you form any special friendships with anybody within the camp?
Yes, I met this man. He was a rabbi in this town not far from Kurishmeze. The name of the town was Rachov. And he was working at the same company where I was working in the camp. And he also had 2 sons with him. And he was a very religious person. He constantly, from morning till night, he was praying and praying, and I had some conversations with him.
Tell me about those conversations.
Well, I was a kid and he was in the 50s. So I used to talk to him where he comes, and he used to talk to me religious things, which it wasn't very much. I still am not educated that much in religion. And that's about it. Just and mostly in the holidays when it came, I remember that the high holidays, we got closer to each other, and we were cleaning these frames from the cement, and he was praying for us, with us. He knew all the prayer he didn't have to read it. He knew it all by heart. And I started, to believe in him, and I was a fan of his. And he never ate anything that wasn't kosher. He had this blackouts who heard of him before the camps, I understand. And he used to support them with food. He used to treat them better than the average person. So he had more of food than we had. And he also had two sons there that he worked with him. And that was the extent of, otherwise I didn't know anybody else.
Did you ever seek his advice or his blessings?
Not really, no, I did not. But I sort of felt good when I spoke to him.
Did you know if anybody else ever went to him to ask advice on religious matters within the camp?
As that black elster used to talk to him a lot. I don't know what the reason, because that black elster himself wasn't a good person. But somehow he believed in this man. So I don't know what the conversations were.
Do you know if there were any gypsies or Jehovah Witnesses within the camp?
And in my camp, maybe there were, but I wouldn't know. I don't know.
Were you aware at this point of what was happening outside the camp? You talked about the American planes coming by.
That's what I know about the outside world, nothing else. We didn't communicate with anybody.
Did you ever get or receive any type of packages?
No. No way.
Did you ever have any prominent visitors that came to the camp, like Red Cross or anything like that?
I never saw it. No. The only prominent visitors were the Gestapos, the officers. They used to walk through and walk out. And most of the guards, these Gestapo's guards, they really weren't German. They were mostly Croatian, because I heard them speaking, not German, I heard them speaking a Slav language. I speak Slav. So most of them were really, the Germans were only the leaders, the officers.
Tell me about what happened then.
Well, after the war went on with Germany and Russia, and the Russians started coming closer and closer to our camp. Our camp was situated between Krakow and Katowice. There were two big cities. And I used to see the road was like outside of the fence. And I used to see people walking through, or a car passing by, trucks. So when they occupied, the Russians came closer to our camp. When they occupied Krakow, they started evacuating us further in. We had to line up, and they loaded up these wagons with their belongings, which we had to push. It was like a horse and wagon, and that was like end of November, which the snow was big snow there, and we had to push these wagons for them. And we went on, they called it a dead march. We were marching from this camp someplace else. They took us.
And that was from when till when?
Well, I believe it took us 2 weeks. but I really didn't keep track of it. I know we were marching, and a lot of people got killed because they couldn't march any longer. They shot them. If you just slipped and fell down on the floor, immediately they shot them. And we used to sleep on the road in the snow. They gave us some rest. I remember I woke up once, I was in the snow sleeping. And what I remember very vividly is that they stopped. It was like a barn on a farm. And they pushed us all into that barn at nighttime. And you couldn't sit or hardly stand. We were pressed together. And in the morning, when they opened the doors, the light came in, and I saw that people are stacking up bodies, to this way, to the other way, mountains of bodies. They were all died in that barn. And we kept, after that, whoever survived, we kept on going. And finally, when we came to a camp, what I heard, I didn't see any sign, or I heard the name is Blechame. So we were there. And after a day, the Russians got close to this camp, and the guards disappeared. When I heard that there's no guards, and other people heard the same thing, we started running to the kitchen to get food. We knew one followed the other. So I got to the kitchen there, and there were those big barrels where they had cooked. And people were reaching in, whatever was potatoes or whatever it was. We were, even raw potatoes, we grabbed and we were eating. And it just happened that this one of the rabbi's son was there, and I saw him. Yeah, what happened is the guards left, but then an hour later they returned. When they returned, they started shooting at us in the kitchen, and a lot of people got shot there. And one of this rabbi's son was shot. Running back, and I knew the rabbi remained in that block where I left. And I know he is alone there, and the other son, I don't know, disappeared also. But on the way running back to the barrack, I see was a tremendous big high cement wall, and I see there's a hole in there, and people are like disappearing. And I ran closer, and I see people are running out, escaping. And I said to myself, I don't want to leave the rabbi here. I ran back to the block, and I said, come with me. He hesitated. He says, I'm waiting for my sons. They're supposed to be here. I said, just come with me. We'll meet them somewhere. And somehow he listened, and we ran to this hall, and we were able to escape from that hall. And we went into a wooden area. It was all trees. And we were walking. Meanwhile, the bullets from the Russians and Germans were flying back and forth. The Russians weren't there. We were still on the German side. And we walked in the wooden area, and we met a few other ones. So of course the rabbi immediately said, let's pray. So we got together and we prayed in the wooden, that area. Then got dark, and I didn't know what are we going to do here. We're still on the German side. We have to go someplace to find food or where to sleep. So the other people, everybody went their own way. I remained myself with the rabbi. So we were walking, and I heard the dog barking. As I approached where the dog was a farmhouse, and I told the rabbi, you wait here, I'm going to see if anybody lives there. So thinking anybody could have been there, the German soldiers could have been there too and just run into them. But I had no choice. So I knocked on the door, and this old couple, German people, opened the door, and they looked at me. They saw the clothes. It looks like they knew who I was. And I asked them, is it possible for us to stay here? So they said yes. They took me in. So I said, wait, I have to go back and get another person. So I ran back, and I got the rabbi, and we went into this house. They put us up on the attic in hay, covered us with hay. They gave us food, and they said, wait here till the Russians occupy. So we were lucky, and as during the night I heard German soldiers. They came in and they were talking loud German, and so I said, oh my God, if they come up to the attic, we're dead. So luckily they didn't. They were sleeping over in that house also downstairs, and we were in the attic upstairs. And we were there for quite a while. I really don't know the days or the weeks we were there. And they gave us food, and they were very nice to us.
Did they have any conversation with you?
Not at all. It looked like what they wanted to, this is my interpretation, maybe I'm wrong, save their own skin. They figured, well, if the Russians come in, we're going to save them. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. So after I heard Russians speaking Russian, so I knew immediately that the Russian soldiers are there. So I said to the rabbi, let's go downstairs. We came down, and we saw these Russian soldiers with white sheets over them because it was snow, and they were fighting. And we were still in these striped suits, and I thought that I'm going to say, I'm Yevrei, you know, that means I'm a Jew. They're going to fall all over me and help me. But they didn't care. They didn't care at all. So
what was their reaction?
It was very cold. They were in trouble too. They were fighting, you know. I don't know if they were reacting because they were Jews or they were in had their own problems. You know how a soldier is up front. But they told us, go. And we were walking, the bullets flying back and forth, and we were walking, I don't know where I was walking, just away from the front. And finally we met a whole group of Russian soldiers where they were cooking for the soldiers. They gave us food there, they gave us to eat, and then some of the soldiers, they lined us up. They lined me and the rabbi up, and they wanted to get rid of it. They didn't want to play around with us. So an officer jumped and said, hold. And he took us away. He started talking to us. He took us into it was like an office with the generals and all. They were planning there. They made us feel comfortable. And from then on, we started walking away. We got into a small town. The whole town was burning, and we wanted to get rid of the clothes. So we found a house. The rabbi and I, we went up, was like a two-family house. We went upstairs to look for clothes. We did find, I was able to find the rabbi a dark suit with a dark black coat, with a big hat like a rabbi wears, with a cane and a silver handle like this, and he looked exactly like a rabbi. But that wasn't that great for me either, because when we walked further and then we met civilian people, and they all pointed us as Žid. So it wasn't comfortable. I don't know if they would recognize me as a Žid, but he was typical. So we walked, and finally I got to a station where there was only a locomotive that was testing the rails, if there was a mines or something like that. And as we got to the station, and I jumped up on this locomotive, which these engineers didn't say anything to me, so I felt okay. I could ride away from that area, but the rabbi couldn't jump up. So as I was traveling a distance, I said to myself, oh my God, I left him. I went through so much with him. I'm not going to leave him there all alone. So I jumped out the locomotive, and I went back, and I found him there between the trains, crying and being hysteric. When he saw me, he didn't know what to do with me. He was kissing me and carrying me. So then we started traveling together. Wherever we was a military truck or a horse and wagon or whatever it is, we were just going away from the front. So we finally we reached the city. I remember it was Przemysl was the name. It was in Poland, and we found the Czechoslovakia army. It was a legion, mostly was Jewish boys who were in camp in Russia. And these boys were able to organize an army under the Czechoslovakian flag. And they were fighting also Germany. As I saw already Czech soldiers, and I speak the language, so I was happy. And as a matter of fact, I met their officers and soldiers that came from my town, that I recognized them, they know me. So that was already heaven. They gave me food and everything I wanted. And so we couldn't stay with them, we had to go further. My aim was to go back to my own town to see if anybody survived and comes home. So we were traveling further and further, and we got to Slovakia, and the name of the town was Prešov, which the rabbi found his son there. They met, and it was a big celebration. And after that, and after he met the son, I separated from him and I went on my own. I went to my town.
What did he say to you when you left?
He was, of course, blessed me, and he was very nice. I cannot say the same thing about his son.
Why?
Because the son had food, had a bread, if I remember. And he gave to the father. And the father said, share it with him too. He didn't, he refused. And the father begged him, gave him, he told him the story, what I did for him. Anyway, he refused. So it's a bad experience. But I cannot, he was unbelievable, the man. So anyway, I was aiming to get home, which like in December, I got home with all kind of through trucks, military trucks, and walking and all kind of transportation. So I got home. So
This is what year?
that was in 1944 in December. At home, that means I went to Kirchmess. So I found already there like 3 men. They weren't in concentration camps. They came from Russia. They were in the labor camp, and they had occupied a house that belonged to Jewish people before they took us away. And they made there, whoever comes there, stop there, made like a commune. And I joined them. And we had there like a kitchen. Whoever comes, they came there and slept there. And I was in then also it was occupied by the Russians. The Russians weren't great, they didn't treat us so nice either because we were still weak, that they call us Muslims. They were skinny and weak, and we couldn't work. But they, Russians, took us to work. No matter how sick we were, they took us to work in the mountain and to fix tunnel, which the war, during the war, that they bombed there, whatever. So when I went out there twice, and this third time, I said to myself, I'm not going to go. It's the same thing as the Germans. They treat us the same way. So in the morning, they came to take us to work, and I ran away. I ran upstairs to the attic. I locked myself. There was a box there, and I heard screaming Russian, where is he, where is he? And they went looking for me. They didn't find me. So next day I was afraid to get out of there. Maybe they're gonna, but next day I didn't say anything. So I was there a few weeks in this time, Kirchmesser, and then as people arrived, I was told that my sister and brother, they saw my sister and brother in Prague. So when I heard that, I dropped everything, and whatever transportation I had, I was aiming to get to Prague, which Prague from our town would be like 1,000 miles. During the regular train, it took 24 hours to get there. So it took me quite a long time to get there. And I did meet my sister there. And then they called my brother in, but I didn't see my brother. I was like 5 years old or something. I didn't see him because he was taken away, as I mentioned, when they occupied Prague. So they introduced me to my brother. My brother was still not 100% from what he went through 6 years in camp. And he worked, he also was an escapee, escaped from the concentration camps, and he worked in the crematorium, so our parents, so he wasn't, he was sick, so he said, that's not my brother. And we couldn't convince him that I'm his brother. Finally, and I bursted out crying. I was crying. My own brother doesn't recognize me. Finally, they talked him in that I'm his brother. So from
Did you recognize him? Did you remember him?
Yes, I did, yeah. And then when I got to Prague, so I had to survive in the free world, so I got a job, I started working in Prague, and also tailoring, I went to work. But I was never satisfied to stay there because they were talking that they're going to close the borders, so the communists will close the borders and they won't let out anybody. So I worked in Prague for a few months, and I worked with a Jewish boss. And so I wasn't happy to stay there. So I organized, I told the boss and my brother, let's go. I heard that people are going to Germany and they have DP camps and they give food there, and there's a chance from there you could go to Israel or United States or wherever you want to go. And I had relatives here in the United States, my grandmother, my uncles, aunts, and I was aiming to go to the United States. But when I got to, so this boss listened to me, and we all crossed the border at night. It wasn't legal, but we crossed the border during the night, and we got to Germany.
Did you have any documentation or any papers?
Absolutely nothing. It was just on black. We paid off the guards. There was a group there. They were grouping, and before we crossed the border, and we paid off the guards on the border.
4. My name is Debbie Portnoy. Today's date is October 6, 1995. I am conducting an interview with Mr. Jan Menchel. The interview is being conducted in Queens Village, New York, United States of America. Mr. Menchel, you were telling us about what happened to you after the war. Tell me how you got to the United States.
Well, when I arrived to those DP camps, I registered the name of the camp was Salzheim, and at the same time I wanted to leave Germany as fast as possible. So I also registered, I was in a kibbutz. A kibbutz is an organization which people go to Israel. And I figured whatever comes first, I just want to get out of there. So we tried a few times from kibbutz to go to Israel, but they turned us back. We got to the French borders and they turned us back. And after that, I heard from the American consul, the United Jewish Appeal. I went there and I said, and they told me that they're going to give me papers to come to the United States. So I was happy about it, and finally it came through that the United States papers came through first, and I arrived here in December 1946. I had here a lot of family.
How did you get here?
We got here by a military boat. The name of the boat was Mary Marilyn, I think. Mary Marilyn. So we arrived. It took us a few, I don't know, 10 days or something like that. We got here. My brother and I, we came together.
What happened with your sister?
My sister remained in Czechoslovakia. She married a Czech officer, and she remained in Czechoslovakia. Just my brother and I and this boss of mine from Prague, we came together to the United States. I know I had here a grandmother and a lot of uncles and aunts, and you know, the talk to come to America that you could find gold on the street. Everything is fantastic. So they were waiting for me at the boat, and I had a valise which it was made after the war out of paper, and it was in December. It was raining, and as I meet my relatives there, they wanted to take me to, I think, a trolley car somewhere from the Manhattan. In those days, there were trolley cars. And as I walk, and it's raining, and I'm walking with the valise, and the paper valise just tore up, and all my clothes, what I had in there, which wasn't much, was on the floor, and I remained with the handle. And that's the way I came to this country. And I went to the relatives, my uncle, and they greeted me nicely. They gave me a dinner there, me and my brother. They brought me some clothes. And after dinner, I thought, you know, I was a little disappointed because I thought the grandmother, she's going to fall all over me and hug me and kiss me. No such thing, because she never knew me. She never, I wasn't even born when they left. So they ran to the room, and my brother and I, they took us to the room. And next day, I went looking for a job. So my uncle was a business agent and a waiter uni, but my trade is tailoring. So he took me up to this factory. I know how to work as a tailor. It was a sweatshop. And he left me there and said, okay, that's your job, you're going to work here, and he left. So I didn't write down the address of the building or anything. Just after work, I know how to get to the subway. I went to the Bronx, I lived in the Bronx. Next day, I went back to work, and I was on 14th Street. I got 14th Street there, but I didn't have the address. I didn't recognize the building where I worked. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. But I saw this man is walking with a Jewish newspaper under his arm, and he's going to work. So I figured if he reads Jewish, I could speak Jewish. I went over to him and I told him the story. He said, don't worry, come with me. He was a tailor also. So he took me up to his shop and I started working there. So since then, I'm working. It's I went through. It wasn't easy to adjust to work in a sweatshop. I was used to do hand tailoring, slow, and then here these sweatshops you have to produce, and I worked very, very hard. Now, till I worked for 5 years, and I lived in the Bronx, and I met people in the Bronx, and I was sitting in this house, and this woman walks in, which was my wife's mother, saw me sitting. I was very skinny, depressed, and she came home and she told my wife, I met a little boy, skinny, depressed. I feel so sorry for him. I have to introduce him to a girl. So I was at that time 24 years old. And she introduced me to this girl, but this girl didn't even want to make a date because and she was European also, that girl, because I was European, so she didn't want to go with us anyway, European. She wanted probably an American boy. So anyway, then I started going to her house. She invited me for dinner and started going, and I met my wife, Marilyn. She was a kid. She was 16 years old. And I started dating her, and I was at her Sweet 16 party, and it looked like we fell in love. And she was still going to high school. At that time, I was unemployed because in the trade and the sweatshops, there was like seasonal work. At that time, I didn't have work. So I was sitting in front of the school to wait my girlfriend should come out. I used to carry the books home with her, and we got very, very close. And finally, in the summertime, she was a counselor in the Catskills watching children. I used to go and visit there, and we had good times. And I asked her if she would want to get engaged with me. And she at that time was 17. So she was a shock to her. She said, I'm going to ask my parents. So when she said, I'm going to ask my parents, I know it's not going to happen. They're going to be against it. But anyway, we pulled it through and we got engaged. The parents weren't too happy because I didn't speak the language. I didn't have a job. And it was really, I could understand now that I'm a father. I could understand the situation. So, but she couldn't help it, the mother. So my wife, she's finished high school. I promised her parents when later on I make sure that I'm going to see to it that she's going to finish college. She's going to go to college. So anyway, we got married within a year or so, and a year later my daughter was born. Her name is Rita. And one thing I have to say about my wife, she was very mature at her age and unbelievable dependent, and it was just a love story. And we got married, and as I said, in 1 year we had Rita, and I worked at these factories, but I always had in mind that I don't want to remain working in a sweatshop. I was always looking for something to improve my life. So I used to run lunch. I didn't have money, but I used to run looking for cleaning stores. I went to see chicken farms without money. I never had any money. So after we had when we
What type of work are you doing right now?
well, I'm gonna get to that. Okay, right now I manufacture sweaters. I have a knitting factory. I have 200 people working for me. My son was also in the business. I took him in.
Are you currently involved in any Jewish organizations or Jewish activities?
Well, what I'm involved is in the temple. That I give a lot of charity to the temple. I build a study in the temple. It's called, named after, in honor of my parents and brother. It's called the Menchel study room, which I'm very proud of that. I brought a scroll.
Tell me about that.
Well, the rabbi got an idea that there are scrolls in London and a museum, which it came from Prague, from the old temple, Pinkas Temple, it was called. It's a very old scroll. It's over 300 years old. It was his idea, but he didn't have the finance. So he called me up. He knew how generous I am with the temple. So he called me up and told me the story. So I said, by all means, I financed the whole thing, just get it. So they did go down. He sent somebody down to England to look at the scroll, and this man brought back the scroll, and it's called the Holocaust scroll, which was financed by me.
Did you ever meet up with the rabbi?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
After a few years, which I had my family already, had my 3 kids, 2 daughters and 1 son, I took a trip with the whole family to Europe. And we went from Holland to Belgium, and I didn't plan to go to Switzerland. I know this rabbi is a very big rabbi in Switzerland. He was in, what city? Lugano. There was a Jewish temple there, and he had a lot of followers, and it's like the Lubavitcher Rebbe here, so he was the same out there. But in the train, as I was traveling in Belgium, I saw this Jew with a beard in the train, and I walked in, and I went to him and said, hello, I'm Jewish, and I introduced myself, and I started talking to him in Yiddish, and I asked him if he knows the rabbi from Rachov. He said, of course, I'm his chussid. So I said, oh yeah. So then I told him the story, that I was with him in camp, and I told him the whole story. And that's it. And he went his way, we went our own way. And then we decided, my wife and I, we decided to go to Switzerland, to Lugano. Not thinking I'm going to even see him. So we went there, and when I arrived in Lugano, next day I took a taxi, and I told them, the taxi, take me, show me the Jewish temples, the Jewish quarters, the area. So they took me to the temple, and it was like an afternoon, and those Hasidim, they came out from the temple, and I was standing there coming out from the taxi. They came over to me, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Menchel. He said, you Menchel? He says, the rabbi is waiting for you. Where have you been? So I said, I'm here. So the rabbi at that time was sick. He was in the hospital. So these people said, I want to take you to see the rabbi. So I said, come back the next day in the morning. We have prayers in the morning. You come to our prayers, and from there we go. go to the rabbi. So they took me to the hospital, and I met the rabbi. And of course, he was very happy. He didn't know what to do with me, and I talked to him.
Did he recognize you when you first came
Oh,
here?
I just had to mention my name. So he knew all along. But he knew that I'm coming there. I didn't even know that I'm going to go there. Probably this Jew went back to say that he met me in a train. And he knew that I'm going to go visit him. So that's...
In what way do you feel your Holocaust experiences have changed the way you might have raised your children?
Maybe my children would have been socially and maybe mentally better off if I wouldn't be from the Holocaust. The children from the Holocaust, they are, the upbringing is not the same as what my grandchildren have. I was very into constantly to work, to make a living, to bring home. I used to go 6 o'clock in the morning, come home 10, 11 o'clock. I never played with him the way a father should. I wasn't really a real, like the American men are to the children. I wasn't that type. I constantly worry. I'm not a happy person. No matter how secure I am, I'm afraid for tomorrow. So, and the children feel that. They go through these situations.
In what way does your Holocaust experience reflect your current feelings towards Judaism?
Well, I can't deny that I'm not a Jew. I have Jewish feelings. I was brought up that way. I was born a Jew. And as far as religion, every holiday turns me off. If I think of Passover, when they took us away to the camp, ghettos, if I think of the high holidays, it just turns me off. I cry a lot. It's very, very emotional. And the worst thing always happens during the Jewish holidays. There was always somehow to kill the Jews, to do things. And it's very emotional. I cannot say, I cannot complain. I'm the luckiest man I came to this country. I have a most beautiful family which you're going to meet, a beautiful wife that we're going to celebrate our 45th anniversary. I can't ask for any better life. I don't think anybody could have a better life than I have, what I accomplished. And yet, I'm not a happy person.
On behalf of myself and the survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, I'd like to thank you.
To the right is my mother and her father, Moshe Milan, and his wife, which was a stepmother to my mother, and the other two are two stepsisters. One is in the middle is Reisel, and on the end is Mirce. I found this picture just a day ago. My sister gave it to me. I don't know when it was taken.
Where was it taken?
It was taken in Kirchmesse, Yatsina, and that's all I know about. This is my father's mother, my grandmother. Her name is Rachel. She came here before the war. I really don't know when this picture was taken. It's about it. This is my mother. Her name was Frema, and there's a quarter of my father in the picture. And this kid, it could be me, it could be my brother. I really don't remember that. It was taken in Christmas.
Do you know what year?
I haven't got. I don't know who this kid is. So if it's my brother, then it must be 72 years ago.
How did you get this photo?
This my sister had this. This is a picture of this organization. Was named Chalutz Hatzayir. They trained and taught kids to live in Israel, and I was taken as a group picture. My picture's on the left, on the very bottom.
What year was this taken?
Must have been 65 years ago. And I have my sister is in the picture, and also my brother Shimon, which he died in concentration camp. And this is me again at this organization, Chalutz Hatzayir. I was there, it looks like 5 years old. This is my brother Shimon, who died in concentration camp.